Perfect, thank you. Okay, you should get a prompt that we'll be recording this meeting. We're going to post it on YouTube afterwards for you to review, and if you're so interested, or to share with anyone else. And if you don't want to be seen on camera, you can just turn your camera off. Simply, that's it. And yeah, please keep your microphone off during the meeting. But it's 7 and we are ready to get started right on time. So first off, thank you everyone for coming to our online all candidates forum for the city of Colwood. I welcome you, and this is hosted by CENIC, which is the Citizens Environment Network in Colwood, a local environmental advocacy group where we focus on environmental issues in Colwood. My name is Harley Gordon, and I'm currently the chair of CENIC. I'm going to be helping to moderate this meeting. So I might send you a direct message, or I might turn off your microphone if there's a bunch of sound coming through. But I'll be a little more behind the scenes with the moderation. But to get started, I want to first recognize that we as CENIC acknowledge the city of Colwood sits on traditional territories of the Lekwungen speaking people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. The Day of Truth and Reconciliation was very recently. It was only September 30th. It should be fresh in everyone's mind. And I wanted to share one more call to action, because a land acknowledgement is a call to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but there were 94 of them. So I wanted to share one for our future potential city councilors, and that was the call to action number 57, which is: we call upon the federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal governments to provide education to public servants on the history of Aboriginal peoples, including the history and legacy of residential schools, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, treaties and Aboriginal rights, Indigenous law, and Aboriginal Crown relations. So it's a call to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and it specifically calls out municipal governments. So I wanted to share that with our future councilors. So CENIC, if you aren't aware, is the Citizens Environment Network in Colwood, and we are a volunteer organization whose mission is to encourage and support measurable progress on climate action and environmental sustainability in Colwood. Colwood residents with an interest in supporting this mission, this message, are welcome to join. CENIC is open to everyone. You can send us an email at colwoodcenic@gmail.com, and we'll let you know how to join. And we have a $20 membership fee. We usually meet monthly by Zoom, sometimes in person. And yeah, I would welcome everyone to send me an email or send CENIC an email at an email address I'm just going to put in the chat right now if you are interested in joining our organization. With that, I would like to introduce our moderator and host for the evening. She is a 2-time Colwood City Councilor, community builder, and I'm pretty sure she's won a Grammy, Judith Cullington.
Don't think I've ever won a Grammy, but thank you, Harley. That was amazing. So yes, my name's Judith Cullington. I am a member of CENIC. I am your moderator for this evening, and I really want to thank everybody for attending this evening. We've got about 40 people online so far, and I can see people continuing to come in. So thank you. This is a really important part of democracy. I also really want to thank all of the candidates for putting their names forward. So yes, having been twice elected, having had to participate in all candidates' meetings, I can absolutely feel your pain. It is not easy to run. These kind of all candidate sessions are hard, but we really appreciate you stepping up. For folks just joining, please note that this meeting is being recorded. So if you're in the audience, you may want to turn off your video, but we will encourage the candidates to leave their videos on. We're also asking audience members not to use the chat function. We're going to be using this so that candidates can see the questions. So that kind of helps to avoid clutter and make it easier for people to see. As Harley has said, please stay on mute. That'll help avoid any background noise. We do have some candidates who were not able to attend tonight. So I bring apologies from candidates Doug Kobayashi, Ian Ward, Kim Jordison, Misty Olson, and Sasha Vilbert. I will be reading short statements from most of them as part of the introductions. the format for this evening. So we're going to start with a round of introductions from each of the candidates. And then we're going to have 4 rounds of questions dealing with different topics related to climate and environment, including some quick yes/no questions. Then a series of questions that have been posed by CENIC members. Just to note, we will not be taking questions from the floor. I think we have a very full program as it is. Finally, we'll have closing statements. And then you will be well informed with all of the information that you need to vote for all of these lovely people. Our timekeeper tonight is Judy Knoll. Thank you, Judy. So when the speakers have 15 seconds left, she will raise her virtual hand. And when you are out of time, you will hear a noise like this, Judy. You need to unmute to make a noise. There you go. Yep. There's your magic, you are out of time noise. So we encourage candidates to, when you hear that noise, finish your sentence, otherwise Harley will get nasty and mean and he'll mute you. All right, so if everybody is ready to go, I'm very much looking forward to this evening. So each of the candidates have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and we have asked them as part of their introduction to respond to the question, what do you consider to be the most important environmental issue in Colwood, and what specific actions would you like to see the city take to address this? So we're going to start with candidates for mayor, in this case, Rob Martin, and then we'll be going through Colwood council candidates in reverse alphabetical order. So, Rob Martin,
hi.
You have 2 minutes starting now.
Okay, thank you. And good evening, everyone. On May 29th, 2019, Colwood Council declared a climate emergency and endorsed the CRD's call to work towards achieving carbon neutrality by 2030. I encourage you all to go to the City of Colwood website and watch that discussion of council during that debate. I believe it's a great example of the differential between myself and Doug Kobayashi in regards to environmental leadership. You can go to 1 hour and 40 into that meeting. So that's May 29th, 2019. So how do we? And so the question was, what is the most environmental concern for myself? And that's how do we get to carbon neutrality? And so I do want to talk about an actual meeting that I went to on August 3rd. And this meeting was facilitated through myself and Mitzi Dean, our local MLA. And in that meeting was Minister Rolstad, who is the Minister for BC Hydro, as well as several staff members, actually 7 staff members, including the Vice President for BC Hydro, as well as Gablecraft. We talked about the story of how Latoria North Housing has Fortis gas heat pumps. Why? Because Fortis is able to offer it at $35 a lot. And then they're able to amortize that over 30 years, so that's how they recover that cost. For Latoria South needs to be a master plan green development using electric heat pumps, moving away from carbon-based options. To do that, however, for Gablecraft, that's a minimum $2 million hydro investment just to start off, versus the $35 a lot to use Fortis gas. The discussion was quite intense and quite thorough with Minister Rolstad, and we really did discuss the issues around how do we make this as green as possible community, and how the province has that aspiration as well. Minister Rolstad understood it and promised to me that he would be bringing it back to the cabinet table for further discussions. I hear the beeping, so I will stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. So our other mayoral candidate is Doug Kobayashi, and I would like to read the following statement from Doug. He says, everything is connected, so the work of our council must be integrated and viewed through the lens of our environment and how best to work with it. The future of our community depends on it. I remain committed to stewarding the environment for future generations. Although Colwood is relatively small, we can lead by example with measurable, effective emission reductions to become carbon neutral as soon as possible. Some of the key actions I would implement include establish baseline metrics and set realistic greenhouse gas target reductions across the city's operations. People need to understand where we're at and where we need to go. How can you hit a target you can't clearly identify? Work towards reducing our carbon footprint by using alternative energy with our vehicle fleet and maintenance equipment as soon as financially feasible. Implement and promote our active transportation plan. Implement municipal building retrofits that have major impact on emissions. Work with the school district to support their efforts in developing programs that will increase awareness and assist us in the mitigation and adaptation to climate change. Reduce residential energy use by continuing and developing and promoting new incentives for residents to reduce their energy use. Develop and implement a plan focused on attracting companies in the private sector funding in growing economies such as green and clean tech. Enhance and expand green spaces, protect wetlands, and increase the tree canopy through greening initiatives such as the 2 Billion Trees program. Expand initiatives to increase food security, expand community gardens and grow your own learning opportunities, and encourage new technologies that bring healthy and nutritious food closer to home. And there's even more we can do if we maximize all our natural resources, including the wisdom of our community members like CENIC. It's all connected. So that was Doug Kobayashi's statement. And the next person I would like to invite to speak is Stuart Parkinson. Stuart, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Judith, and thank you to CENIC for hosting this and for everybody who's sitting in and listening. Stuart Parkinson, an incumbent councillor after one term, attempting to return to further some of the work that's been started over the last 4 years. The most important environmental issue facing Colwood made me think a little bit. Obviously, sea level rise, tsunamis, flooding, storm surge that we've just seen on the East Coast, pretty serious. However, I would suggest that in Colwood, we're well ahead of the game, done some excellent work on the foreshore and sea level rise and the like. So that's not my my key issue. Most of the greenhouse gases in Colwood are produced from transportation. Senior levels of government are pushing electric vehicles hard, and I think we have some supply issues at present, but I see that's going to make a great difference in the years to come. Heavier equipment, I'm not so sure that electricity is the answer, perhaps hydrogen, and if so, anything the city could do to support a hydrogen fueling station would be important. But to me, the issue that is within our wheelhouse is the existing housing stock and building stock within our community. The greenhouse gases given off by these and the opportunity to reduce those is substantial. We now have a program that subsidizes energy audits of housing, perhaps heat pumps, switching to electric heat pumps. Those are nice to do, a good start, but to really make a difference in one of our biggest contributors under our control, recognizing that most of the homes and buildings that we see in Colwood are going to be around for another 30 years, I think we have to address that. And I would support perhaps even the city buying a couple of houses to go through the retrofits. There's a lot of similar houses. If we went through a retrofit on one of them and showed the real difference, the substantive difference over the ownership of that house, I think the city could really make a statement of improving that kind of stuff. So I know my time's limited. I won't go any further, but thank you for listening to that.
Thank you, Stuart. Kim Mowens, I'd love you to unmute, and you have 2 minutes. And I hope I pronounced your last name correctly.
That's good. Good evening, and thank you for including me in your discussion on climate change. My name is Kim Mons. I was born in Victoria, and I've lived in Colwood for the last 19 years. And I'm proud to see Colwood strive to mitigate climate change. A little bit about me. I live on Triangle Mountain, and I'm an avid park user, and I walk my dog every morning. I love our green spaces and walking trails, and I think they're the jewel in the crown of Colwood. To answer your question, there's far too much waste going into our island landfill. We need to think about future generations and what we are leaving behind. We are already practicing reduce, reuse, and recycle model, but I feel we could do a better job. My suggestions are reduce gas use by more park and ride options, encouraging a 20-minute city in the OCP and more charging stations for electric vehicles. Reduce water consumption by planting more drought-resistant trees and shrubs, removing water-dependent lawns from boulevards, and planting succulents and drought-resistant ground cover like microclover. Reuse more. Reuse construction materials and household items from pop-up donation centers as the upcycling trend gains momentum. Recycle more. Make it easier for residents to drop off styrofoam, light bulbs, batteries, and dangerous goods with a local drop-off center. Convert public trash cans into bright-colored mini recycling stations throughout the community. That is just a start. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. I would next like to read the statement provided by Ian Ward. So Ian says, one of the perils of campaigning is that invariably there are schedule conflicts that are insurmountable. Regrettably, this is the case with me in relation to the scheduled all candidates meeting on Tuesday, October the 4th. My day job requires me to be on site in Toronto for a critical deal. As a result, I will be unable to attend the all candidates meeting. Perhaps I can share with CENIC that I care greatly about climate change and environmental action. I support innovative approaches to transportation, greenhouse gas reduction, green building, and more. Locally, I'd love to support subtle but significant changes, such as boulevard gardens and developer commitments to Indigenous plantings to reduce water waste and needs. I salute and have participated in the Greater Victoria Green Team actions, including here in Colwood, where my wife and I joined CENIC member and fellow candidate David Grove in removing invasive English ivy from Colwood's Ocean View Park. Suffice to say, I believe that we are aligned in our desire to raise awareness of environmental and energy issues. And while I have much to learn, I am an ally in educating, engaging, and supporting Colwood's efforts in this regard. Should anyone in your organization wish to ask me questions independently, please don't hesitate to contact me and I can put his email into the link. So he says, best wishes to you, CENIC members, and all candidate participants. So that was the statement from Ian Ward. Next, we have Stephen McCaskill. Stephen, you have 2 minutes.
Awesome. So hello, friends. I'm really honored to be participating in this important conversation. So my platform makes it clear that I'm concerned with the confluence of population growth and climate change. I'm also a business student, so when I talk about specific actions to address environmental issues, I understand that there are certain economic stressors and budgetary implications to every decision a municipal government makes. All that said, as leaders, we must find ways to house a growing number of people in an affordable and attainable manner while reducing our ecological footprint. It's a big and complicated endeavor involving interplay of social equity, economic health, water sources, waste reduction, protecting ecosystems, food, consumption, transportation, energy sources, and emissions. In Canada, emissions are 60% of our ecological footprint, and Colwood is exceptionally car reliant. So today I'd like to talk about reducing our emissions. The first thing is to create conditions for a transport mode shift. The research is clear we must avoid further urban sprawl and car reliance. We need to design neighborhoods where work, school, and daily needs are a walk, bike, or mobility scooter ride away. Encourage active transport, make public transit an accessible and logical choice, and pursue electrification of transit systems, car sharing, trains, and even a ferry. We can also reduce emissions by further implementation of the BC Energy Step Building Code. Building this way improves efficiency, comfort, health, and building longevity. We should also further incentivize making older homes more energy efficient. Together, these approaches can reduce our carbon footprint and traffic congestion, leave more room for parks and habitat, create much needed housing options for young people, seniors, persons with mobility issues, and many others, while spreading the tax burden across more households and increasing tax revenue by attracting new businesses. The reality is we are in a climate emergency and we must adapt. So rather than doing more harm with further urban sprawl, let's create growth that is good for our planet, our community, our health and well-being, while benefiting our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Dean Jansen, would you like to introduce yourself? You have 2 minutes.
Hello, and thank you. Nice to see everybody. And my name is Dean Jansen. I'm one of your current incumbent council members and have been since 2018. And I'm just nuts enough to go for a second term. My background is public safety. I have been a police officer now for 27 years, and I'm able to leverage that public safety experience to the betterment of our community. My Colwood, we're happy, positive, hopeful, and we see a bright future. We're welcoming, inclusive, and we invite everyone to live and enjoy our environs. We covered our green spaces, our parks, our beaches, something I will endeavor, and I've committed to endeavoring to expand and protect as much as possible for future generations. We are a growing community, and we are in transition, and we have some growth pressures, as we all know. And that's happening whether we think it should or shouldn't. It's just the new current reality. How do we provide homes for all the people moving to our community, from a first rental all the way to seniors who may wish to age in place in our community? We've done a good job widening our commercial tax base here in this past term, quite frankly. We're bringing hundreds of jobs in the Allendale district, which means people will be able to have an option to work out this way and not have to travel into town. We've achieved much this term through hard work, and I humbly ask for your vote once again. And as far as your question about climate change, I'm going to take a different tack to it. And those who heard me at the all candidates meeting, it's going to be the same tune. The climate change is happening. You're going to hear lots of great ideas from people way smarter than I am on how we can reduce and mitigate greenhouse gases, how we can electrify, and what we can do for the future. My fear is that the horse may be out of the barn in some respects with regard to climate change, things like sea level rise. So what are we doing as a community to target harden our infrastructure to be able to respond to an emergency? Did you know that we don't even have a hardened EOC center in the case of an earthquake or a major weather event? We did have some flooding because it was in my neighborhood last year when we had that weather of the continuous rain for days and days on end. And it concerns me that we haven't built that capacity yet. So yes, friends, I believe that we can all make changes, and you're going to hear lots of great ideas tonight, but I do think we need to look at this from a safety lens as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dean. And I would love to take the opportunity to read a short statement from Misty Olson. Climate change has a huge impact, not only on our ecosystems, but on our overall health and quality of life. And we know that down to our very core. I do believe that small changes and shifts in our behavior can have significant impact. We need to start at the foundation, and that begins with education at home and in the school system. We must work collectively with the school district and other levels of government to educate and encourage behavioral change and attitude towards climate change and its long-term effects if we don't take action, and its long-term effects if we don't take action. One specific thing that I would like to see the city champion is to expand on the concept of Eat Your Boulevard that was established during pandemic times. There is significant opportunity here to educate this community on the importance of food security at a local level. I strongly believe that we must continue to educate and reprogram our way of thinking, which will in turn help reduce our carbon footprint. Thank you and good luck this evening. I hope you have a strong turnout. I appreciate you allowing me to provide a statement. And that was from Misty Olson. Next, we have David Grove. David, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good evening to you all. Tonight, I'd like to provide a short outline of some of my accomplishments here in Colwood since moving. In 1995, Gwen and I, our 2 boys, Julian and Timothy, 3 and 5 years old, purchased the bakery at the corner of Machosin and Lagoon Roads. This valuable and successful neighborhood food business grew to 15 employees over the 22 years we owned it. In that time, we paid out approximately $3.6 million in payroll. On top of that, we made a decent living for our family sufficiently to eventually purchase and renovate our home, located a short 2-minute walk from work. This renovation included the installation of an edible foodscape, removing all of the lawn while providing much of our own food. Production surplus allowed contributions of berries, fruits, herbs, and vegetables to the bakery kitchen. The electric vehicle charge station we installed in 2012 was the first for a retail location in Western Canada. It continues to operate free to customers. The solar panels followed that same year, as did 2 on-demand hot water systems, efficient furnace, double glazed windows, high efficiency deck ovens, steam ovens, and steam kettle. The entire building uses some 75 LED light installs, which helped us to make valuable strides both in lowered energy cost and marketing benefit toward brand enhancement. Selling Royal Bay Bakery 5 years ago allows me the time and energy, think adequate sleep, to pursue this civic service opportunity representing the good citizens of Colwood. I have every intention of being a builder of solutions to the myriad problems we now face: air, land, and water. Our health is everything. Good health is the product of safe and secure homes, nutritious food, adequate sleep, sound jobs and finances, along with a clean environment. A respectful lifestyle with an eye to living more softly upon the land is my personal goal. This vision is closely allied with a strong and renewed official community plan for the city of Colwood. May we all benefit from the choices and decisions we make together over the next 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Cynthia Day.
Thank you. So I first moved to Colwood 35 years ago because of the green space. I've been an active participant since the 90s and served on the Greenways Committee. I've championed parks and helped to guide the creation of Havenwood Park with a conservation covenant, a management plan, citizen involvement, and annual budget allocations. This has grown to include park management plans for all our parks and active park support groups like the Friends of Havenwood and the participation of regional groups like the Green Teams. I invited Ramona DeGraff, biologist, to present on the forage fish breeding grounds at Royal Bay Beach. More interactive town hall style meetings are needed to help improve the exchange of knowledge between staff and residents. Currently, the only thing holding back a potential environmental disaster at Royal Bay Beach is an eroding sandy bluff. The settling pond may contain chemicals, but the fine sediment itself could wipe out the forage fish breeding grounds below. Colwood needs to understand the functional requirements of our ecosystems, and we must identify our forests and wetlands on our planning maps and ensure that they continue to provide us with carbon sequestration, stormwater management, soil retention, and keeping our climate temperate. Please support me to bring forward more opportunities to keep us engaged, enlightened, and working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. And finally, for this introduction, I would like to read a short statement from Kim Jordison, who says, trees and forested areas have been identified by residents as one of the community's most cherished assets, and there needs to be a more sensitive approach in planning that protects and celebrates Colwood's natural assets. We need to be thoughtful in balancing growth and green space and protecting our parks and tree canopies. I believe the City of Colwood is already working to address climate change by ensuring that we both reduce energy and GHG emissions and be more resilient to the impacts of climate change. I will promote the active transportation plan and continue to push for light rail transit to get people out of their vehicles and to move people quickly from the West Shore to Victoria. I am committed to prioritizing our climate crisis. Extreme weather changes such as floods, fires, heat domes, and droughts are affecting our communities now, and we need to take the necessary steps to ensure emergency plans are in place in order to keep our communities safe. So that was the statement from Kim Jordison. So that concludes our introductions. Congratulations, candidates, you've made it this far. Moving along. Our first round of questions is going to relate to climate action. So we all know that local governments can play a really important role in both reducing carbon emissions that are contributing to the climate catastrophe, so also known as climate mitigation. At the same time, communities need to adapt to the inevitable impacts that we are already starting to experience, climate adaptation. Questions in this section relate to climate leadership from the city. There are 2 questions in this category, and what we're going to do is half the candidates will answer the first question and half the second question, and we'll do that same format for each of our 4 rounds. And I've mixed it all up in as random way as I can possibly do. So the first question will go in this order to candidates Stuart, David, and Stephen, and you have 1 minute to respond. So starting with Stuart, what actions should the City of Colwood take to reduce emissions in Colwood? Stuart.
Well, thanks for that softball question there, Judith, because it lets me carry on from where I probably didn't finish off very well. I mean, we had a couple of great reports come to council last night to talk about the greenhouse gas emissions from our city and from our internal city works. And again, as I tried to stress in my thing, the area where we have some influence and that can make the biggest difference is the emissions from existing buildings, tightening up existing buildings, putting in heat pumps. We've tried to do that with minor incentives, but frankly, we need to go a lot further and we need to be more aggressive about it. Anecdotally, just from walking around putting brochures out for people and knocking on doors, when people aren't home, I tend to slide a brochure into their front door. And you can just tell the difference. There's some where the weather stripping is so tight you can't get a brochure in, and there's some where the brochure would slide right through to the inside of the house if you're not careful. Huge greenhouse gas emissions from existing houses that are going to continue for 30 years if we don't tighten things up. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. David, same question. What actions should the City of Colwood take to reduce emissions in Colwood? You have 1 minute.
Thank you again. So yeah, it's a big question. We have a Nissan Leaf, myself, I drive. I notice the City of Colwood's got at least 5, there might be 6. This is a big step forward. Last year, 2 years ago, through the Electric Vehicle Association, I was asked by the city staff to submit information about new light, medium, and potentially heavy trucks that are battery electric vehicles only. I suggested taxpayer money has no time to play experimental, but that these trucks, light and medium especially, are on the cusp of breaking out. Many are coming to retail now, and I suspect soon we'll be able to incorporate those into the fleet. We can increase, I believe, minimum energy standards and reward upper limits during construction, whereby also we perhaps can help control construction waste, encourage the use of efficient energy, home energy use, such as heat pumps. I think those incentives are on the way, and I do recall a Solar Colwood initiative some years ago, which was put together by someone we know, and that program worked essentially very well with federal funds, by the way, to encourage a reduction in GHG emissions in Colwood. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Stephen, you have 1 minute, same question.
Yeah, I love this question because I can just kind of continue with what I was saying. So for the past, year and a half, I have been a regular public transit user. I ride the bus more than I do private vehicle. 86% of trips in Colwood are made in a private vehicle. I've been saying this all along. This needs to change. And what we can do through this is expanding our transit routes and using a high land use mix that's bringing businesses into neighborhoods. So folks no longer have to be commuting for work, for school, and for the goods and services that they need. Furthermore, I think following the BC Energy Step Code, getting to a point, as high a point as possible, is also very important, as Stuart pointed out. Getting our homes to be energy efficient is a very important aspect as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. So the next round of questions, the next set of questions is for Kim, Rob, Dean, and Cynthia, in that order. And your question is, what actions should the City of Colwood take to make the community more resilient to climate change? So this one talks about the climate adaptation resiliency piece. So Kim, Harley has put that up in the chat. You have 1 minute for this question.
What do I consider the most
There you
important?
go.
Okay, to make us more resilient, I think continue on the same plan of making sure we get as many electric vehicles on the road, working on our building, reducing the anyone that has an oil furnace, converting over to electric. That's probably about it as far as making them resilient. It's the homes and our vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Rob, 1 minute. What actions should the City of Colwood take to make the community more resilient to climate change? In other words, do climate adaptation.
Thank you. Yeah, so in fact, we're already doing a lot of this work, and I can point to these committees. The first is the Waterfront Stewardship Plan, that we're really looking at how are we going to be operating the waterfront in the long term, and how do we ensure from an environmental standpoint that we're being successful. The second is the Parks Master Plan. Right now we're in the middle of that, and we're continuing to focus on that. And how do we build a parks plan that supports our community so that people have access? We have over 56 parks within the city of Colwood, and we need to ensure that we're building an active transportation plan that's supporting those between the parks so that we're actually connecting those parks together. One of the other things that I also wrote down really quickly is in 2023, we're starting the rapid bus investment in the intersections, and I see the hand, so I'm going to stop.
I mean, it is short. There is always too much to say. Thank you, Rob. Dean, you have a minute.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Resiliency and adaptation, again, it speaks to me on the safety side for sure. I think I've flogged that a little bit, but how we respond to what pending climate issues are upon us. For instance, the massive rain event last time around. Are we cleaning out our ditches and ensuring that stormwater, which is our responsibility, which I had no idea until I started this job, where it goes and where we're sequestering it, what we're using it for, whether it can be diverted to some other useful initiative. The sea level rise, are we prepared down at the lagoon? Are we adding reinforcement where needed? That kind of target hardening. Again, green spaces too, as developments come in, are we leaving a swath of green space to ensure that there is a buffer for these weather events, whether it be wind or rain, whether the canopy is intact for some heat mitigation, those kinds of, I see a lot of that in adapting our community. Thank you so much. Sorry, Judy.
Thank you, Dean. Cynthia, you have 1 minute.
Excellent, thank you. So I think the most important thing when it comes to adaptation is more interaction opportunities for us to have discussions. It takes time to adopt new understandings, and especially when it comes to our homes and our automobiles and where we might have to travel to for work reasons. It really helps when you've talked that over with members of your community about how they're making use of those options. So I've taught all of my children to use the transit system, and I've also helped them to be active transportation participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in each of these rounds, we have included what we've called a lightning round question. And what we're going to do is we're going to pose a question to the candidates, and they have had this question in advance. And we're asking them to raise their virtual hand if they support the following statement. And again, Harley's going to put it up into the chat. The question is, do you agree that Colwood should take action to eliminate or reduce natural gas hookups in new developments? So candidates, if you support that statement, please could you raise your virtual hands? Just wanting to make sure everybody's had a chance to do that. Okay, thank you all very much. If you could lower your hands, we will move on to the next round. So the next round of questions deals with growth and development. Colwood, like other communities, faces tension between the need to increase housing, especially more affordable housing, with the need to protect green space and natural areas. So questions in this section relate to growth and development. And once again, we've divided you into two groups. So the first question goes to, in this order, candidates Dean, then Stuart, then Kim. And again, you'll have 1 minute to respond. Your question is, what do you see as the pros and cons of density?
Thank you so much. And I'm sure I can cover that well in a minute, but in essence, we do need, people are coming to our community. We do need to provide homes, and a variety of homes, different sizes, shapes, variety, all that stuff. I believe that there's a way to do this without throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So doing it in a sustainable fashion, near to options for shopping, for work, near to green space, because we know that people should be able to walk to a park, not have to drive, near to where commuting trails might be located, and obviously increase some transit opportunities. All that comes with some development and densification. Some of the downsides of development are obvious. The loss of our green space and our mature trees, that breaks my heart. And unfortunately, we do have to take difficult decisions. And sometimes splitting the difference is, it can be complicated. Thank you so much. I see Judy's hand.
Thank you, Dean. Stuart, what do you see as the pros and cons of density?
Well, the pros are pretty clear, right? You get more tax bucks per acre, you get more people per acre, and therefore less sprawl. You get access, things become viable, such as grocery stores, other amenities, restaurants, coffee shops, transit. All density favors those things. I mean, the cons are essentially living side by side with each other. It's, we all love our neighbors, but maybe there's guys across the street we wouldn't want to live right beside. So that's it. Do we want to raise our kids, teach them how to throw a football inside a 600 square foot condo, or in the backyard of a 7,500 square foot lot? So those are the balances we have to trade. And I think, like the others, we need a range of options for everybody within our community. Part of what makes a great community. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Kim.
Thank you. I really do believe we need to build up. I know we can still have trees. I know trees are the lungs of our community, but we don't have much of a choice. We're an island. So, and people are going to keep coming here from everywhere. So I think it's the only option is to build condos as high as you comfortably can. And get everybody to come and enjoy the island. I think we can have both. I think we have the balance of the green space and buildings for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. So our next question goes to Stephen, then Cynthia, then David, then Rob. The question is, how would you balance the need for housing with the protection and enhancement of natural areas?
Again, for me, it's pretty simple, and that is density. If you imagine the footprint of a 100-unit apartment complex and contrast that with the footprint of 100 single-family homes, you are saving significantly more green space there. Not to mention, we are in a housing crisis. I am a victim of the housing crisis. I can't afford a single-family home. We need to be densifying. We need to have a high land use mix too, and we need to make sure our infrastructure is keeping up with that density. That means our schools and our healthcare system are all there for those people who are moving in, and we also need to make sure that they are connected by alternative forms of transport, public transit, so that there is not a car reliance. I think if we do those things, we can really balance bringing more people in an affordable fashion while maintaining the green spaces that are so important in Colwood and that I personally really love.
Thank you, Stephen. Cynthia.
Thank you. It's definitely a difficult balance. And on the face of it, there is an assumption that you can allow the density to go up and thereby save the green space. The reality has been that the densities are being approved without the protection of the green space, leading to more and more people sharing less and less green space. So for me, the most important thing to do is protect the green space and then build the density around it. We need our functioning ecosystems. Our wetlands need to be protected. And the solutions are not as simple as they appear, but they have to start with what you need to keep. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. David.
Yeah, it seems to point back to density and housing, but somehow we have to save what we've got first. We have to acquire new, and then we have to build efficiently. We have already thousands of homes in Colwood with substantially good-sized lots, which can be used for food production, but also for multiple accommodation. We allow single suites now. Perhaps we could add a second. We could begin to build houseplexes on corners and properly placed apartment blocks, of course, along transit corridors in the appropriate places. This all gets directed from the official community plan. We build it in, we put a 30, 40-year plan in place. We review it in 2023. We set it up, we plan it, we organize it, we target it. We figure it all out with the experts who help us design it to make it maximally efficient. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And Rob.
Thank you. I hate to point to our neighbors, but I'm going to. So if you look at Langford, one of the major issues that you have in Langford, especially when you build density, is that you're not having green space beside it. And you see a lot of people talking about that. And so the real key is that when we begin to build density, we need to make sure that we're building a healthy environment around that density. And so that density is being supported by the natural environments. It becomes really difficult because what comes first? Does the natural environment and the park come first and then you build density beside the park, or do you build a density and then try and figure out how to build a park post? The structure that we're at right now and with Colwood is that what we're doing is that we're focusing on building that density beside the parks when we need to. So for example, I know it's controversial and I hesitate to bring it up, but I'm going to bring up Havenwood, and I'll also bring up Latoria. When you look at Latoria Park, when you look at the plans, density will be built along Latoria in Latoria South. And that's to support those individuals living in that. We have to figure out, Colwood is a very special place. And from a standpoint of we're able to capture the natural environment as well as allowing people to have a multi-form, different densities, or excuse me, different options on housing versus townhouses and so on. Sorry, Pam, I'll stop.
You are all being wonderful at keeping to time. Thank you all so much. So the lightning round question in this round, and again, we're asking candidates to raise their virtual hand if they support the following statement. Do you think it is important to respect and uphold the official community plan as it relates to city density? Again, I'm just making sure everybody has a chance to raise their hand. Okay. Thank you. You may lower your hands again. Okay, our third round of questions relates to parks and open space, another popular topic with CENIC. So the population of Colwood is growing, as we know, and with this comes increased use of Colwood's parks and open spaces. So the questions in this section focus on opportunities to expand Colwood's park system and ways to protect and enhance natural areas. Again, there are two questions. The first question goes in this order to Cynthia, then Dean, then Stephen, then Stuart. The question is, what are the challenges facing Colwood parks and how would you address these challenges? Cynthia.
So one of the biggest challenges facing our parks is the number of people who are using them. The majority of the parks that we have, last time I checked, it was 57 parks in Colwood. They were put in place more than 10 years ago, most of them. There's a few that have been planned for since then, but really most of the development that's occurring is using the same parks. So we're getting more people on less space, and we need to find ways to improve that ratio. Thank you.
Thank you. Dean.
I could have used a minute to prepare. Thanks so much. And the challenges in our parks. Yeah, so this council undertook to do a detailed parks plan over this past, must be 12 or 18 months. And it's actually been a fascinating exercise. And I believe that in some ways, we're actually underusing our parks with some of the recommendations that are coming from the firm that's helping us through areas where we can locate different things that families like, whether it be playgrounds. I won't say pickleball, so I'll say sport courts and things like dog parks. So I think there's some neat stuff coming on how to better leverage those parks we have. Yes, people are visiting them. Yes, I want them to visit those parks. I visit the parks, and everyone, being the welcome and inviting community we are, encourage everybody to use our parks. And when you actually walk around and talk, it's fascinating to see how many people coming from other jurisdictions to enjoy our parks. We need to be wary for the future and make sure that we are leveraging the developments that are occurring to maximize some further additional green space. And I think Royal Bay is a great example with them planting some multi-thousand number of trees, which I think is spectacular, and their walkways. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Stephen.
So I won't pretend like a minute is enough to cover all the things that we are facing, but I'm a avid parks user. Me and my dog Charlie and my parents are especially we especially like Latoria Creek Park right by our neighborhood. So some of the challenges we're facing here, overuse. I think it's awesome that people use parks, but as our population grows, we're going to get more and more people in there, and it'll get busier, and this will lead to the degradation of habitat. Of course, there's climate change. We are having droughts, especially since we live in the Douglas fir zone, which is one of the 3 most threatened and endangered ecosystems in the world. Finally, as a dog owner myself, I have encountered my fair share of irresponsible dog owners. A lot of poop bags that have been left on the ground that could be dealt with, and also accessibility. I think making our parks open to everyone who wants to enjoy them is very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Stuart.
Thank you. As some of the others referred to, we have had a very extensive parks master plan done at, and not only looked at the parks, but also looked at sort of ratios, typical ratios for other communities, how many parks per 1,000 people or per so many hectares. So, we're trying to stay on top of that. The parks are a wonderful thing. One of the things that I believe is very successful and very worthwhile in our community is not just the parks, but the trails. We have the beach to mountain trail that sort of is mostly there, needs a little bit of infilling. We have the trails, Latoria Creek Park. We've heard about a lot of pressure on the Royal Beach people to put a trail from there down to the lagoon so that we can access all the way along the waterfront. So the trails are hugely important. And the other thing I think I should stress is that we have in a couple of instances acquired some of the sort of steep hillside lands for park, and by the nature of taking a chunk of the land and one piece of property for park almost assures that the next piece of property is going to do the same. So some of the steep rocky tree bluffs will be protected in trees for quite some time. That's a pretty worthwhile thing that we've done. So yeah, there's a lot of use of the parks. A lot of people love them, but I think I would suggest the city's pretty much on top of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. So our second question goes in this order to Rob, then David, then Kim. The question is, what steps should Colwood take to protect its natural assets, including streams, wetlands, and urban forests? Rob, you are first up.
Thank you. So right now at the city, we do a natural asset inventory. And so the staff continue to do that work. And it's something that we need to keep front and center in our minds. we need to be managing that and ensuring that as we move forward, we're doing it in the healthy, proper way. I'm trying to be short on some of my questions.
Thank you. David.
Yes, we should, I think, embark on a natural asset inventory. I think that can be quite detailed and involved so that we know what we've got, we know where we've got it. We could be looking at purchasing new land before it gets developed to slow this thing down. And not to mention the fact that a lot of the park space really has to not just be on the steep hill slopes, which is not particularly usable. The sensitive habitat should be looked after. Wildlife corridors could be looked at where that might still be possible to some degree. And we want to maintain what we've got, restore what is restorable, continue pulling blackberry and other invasive species out of existing parks, as the Friends of Havenwood have done, as the Green Team comes and does. We have wild playgrounds and we have wild untouched parks, and we need to balance the two. Again, let's put it into the OCP, let's plan it out, let's rock it solid, and then we can go from there.
Thank you, David. Kim.
For me, I think it's adding more vegetation, more plants, and also trying to fence off certain areas where, if it is a park, just to try and keep dogs out of the water body. That's been a bit of a challenge that I've found for people. So keeping the pets separate from the wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So our lightning round question in this section, again, candidates, so please raise your virtual hand if you support the following statement. There are some properties in Colwood that could be acquired as additional natural parks. Would you support using public funds to contribute to parks acquisition? Okay, just making sure everybody's had a chance to raise their hand. Thank you all very much. Our fourth round deals with active transportation. So we know that, and again, I'll encourage you all to lower hands. We know that a very large percentage of Colwood's carbon emissions come from transportation. And in addition, we do not have the road capacity or the space to create the road capacity to support ever expanding use of single occupant vehicles. We need to find alternatives. So first question goes in this order to Kim, then Rob, then Cynthia. And the question is, if elected, what actions would you take to increase active transportation? Walking, biking and rolling, use of transit? Kim.
I would probably like to see more cycling, and we're increasing sidewalks, so that's making it safer for people. I know we're still looking at the train. We probably won't hear anything until about March about that, but if there was a way to even take segments of that track out and run a train from Langford right into town, whether it was an electric one, and if we took the tracks out and paved over the area where the tracks were, whether it's electric with cables or not, that would be great if we could do that. That's about it.
Thank you. Rob, you're up next.
Okay, I'm going to try and I know I'm going to get buzzed on this one because I really want to talk about it. First of all, I want to talk about the ferry. The ferry, I'm passionate about and moving this forward. I have worked with BC Ferries over the last, throughout this entire term, looking at, we did a pre-feasibility study to see if we could actually move people from Colwood into downtown Victoria using the ferry system. It's a 300 passenger catamaran that carries also 300 bicycles, so that when we build the infrastructure that's happening downtown, we'll be able to move people that last mile. As well, talking about trains, understand that the long-term vision of BC Transit is that when we're building out the rapid bus lanes, those rapid bus lanes will eventually, once that land is captured and is being used, it will actually, that's where light rail transit will eventually land. Light rail transit will not land on the Galloping Flukes. It will land on where the rapid bus lanes are. So if you look at Douglas Street, for example, where they've captured that, that's the 30-year long-term plan with BC Transit.
Thank you. Well done. Cynthia.
Thank you. So there's a lot of big plans that are a long ways off in the future, but because our climate crisis requires action now, I would like to focus on the things that we can do in the next term. So one of the things that I am passionate about is ensuring that we connect with the schools and the kids that are using the schools to encourage active transportation to school. Almost every kid, not every kid, but almost every kid in school lives close enough to be able to ride or walk to school. And we need to discover what is stopping them from doing that and find ways to help them get out of the cars and get active and be feeling safe and supported in our own community.
Thank you. Second question goes in order to David, then Stuart, then Stephen, then Dean. And the question is, if elected, what steps would you take to reduce the use of single occupancy vehicles within Colwood? David, you are first up.
Thank you, Judith. I think for me, it starts with neighborhood nodes. We develop commercial focused village centers, if you will. All residences are within a 12-minute walk for daily goods and services. Cars can be left at home. We then connect with high frequency transit, which has dependable, reliable, and known schedules, which is allowed by bus lanes dedicated so they're not held up and late. That way people know what's coming and how to get there. I don't know if I even answered the right question. We're talking transit, talking GHG, we're talking good environment. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Stuart.
Well, I was going to agree with David, but I'm not sure I should have. He's answered the wrong question. The single occupancy vehicles is a real tough one because that's what people like to do. The city has invested in some software and some traffic counters to try to encourage ride sharing and you know, people carpooling to get into town and to get into work. And frankly, it's, you know, it was ramped up just before COVID, and then of course nobody was doing anything, and certainly not sharing a car with strangers during COVID. Hasn't taken off. Will it take off if the traffic gets worse? Will it? I'm not so sure. It could be that the only way to do this is to just wait till it gets worse and people are coerced into it. Yes, more buses are going to help. They'll make a difference. But if the question really is if somebody's in a car going to work, are they by themselves or with others? It's a tough one. It certainly is. If we look around the world, we can see that people stay in their single occupant vehicles as long as they can and just put up with a longer commute. So I'd like to have a magic answer, but I don't. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. Stephen.
So the last few questions have really beat home my support of public transit and alternative transport initiatives, ride sharing and the like. But I wanted to tell a quick little story. So for the past 3.5 years, I have worked at the Alexander Mackey Lodge. It's a seniors home in Langford, just by the Legion. And one of the issues a lot of the residents have is the intersection of, it is Goldstream and Veterans Memorial. It is a very large intersection, and although I realize it's not in Colwood, many of the residents are scared to cross that intersection because it is so large and the stoplight or the walk light is so short, and a lot of times they will get caught out in the sidewalk or as the light changes. I've personally helped many of the residents across the street. So what we need to do, one of the things we need to do is build our roadways and build our trail networks for pedestrians rather than cars. More human-centered design is crucial. That will get people out of their vehicles and walking around, especially as we bring the infrastructure in close to neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Dean.
Thank you, Judith. A lot of great ideas thus far. So I'll try to be make some commitments here. My commitment for the next term is this. We have an ambitious sidewalk program. I know they've been mentioned, but my commitment is to endorse and support more sidewalks in our community. We have a plan that's already been in the works for a bit where they're needed. This will get people out of their cars, taking their kids to school, which further to Councillor Day's points, and help the young ones so that mom doesn't have to take them to work, take them to school. Sorry. Something that hasn't been mentioned. We need a shift in philosophy, and I'm talking from the top levels of government on down all the way to our city hall. How about working from home options? Wouldn't it be nice if nobody had to commute ever because you worked in your office, in your home? Maybe you went in occasionally and you were lucky enough to catch the bus. So my commitment is to explore that where we can as a city. Further, jobs in Colwood. If your job is down in the Allendale district below my house, you could walk there. Those are tangible things that we can work on next term. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. So our lightning round question, the fourth one that we're asking, again, please raise your virtual hand if you would answer yes to the following question. Would you support action to increase park and ride areas next to major transit routes in Colwood? Yeah, I think everybody raised their hands on that one. Thank you. So congratulations, you've made it this far. We've gone through the introductions. We've gone through the first 4 rounds of questions. You're all doing wonderfully. You can breathe. The next session or section, we have a series of questions that have been posed by members of CENIC, and each question will go to just one candidate. So Rob, putting you on notice that you will get the first question. The first question is, will you support the continuation of the clean energy heat pump incentive top up in Colwood? And if so, what other incentives would you like to see?
Absolutely. We saw a huge uptake on the first round. In fact, we actually had to go back to budget and to add money to it because the community was stepping up. As we, Solar Colwood was a great example of a sort of a pilot project of how we can begin to introduce this into our community and to begin to have those discussions. I can't give you a specific, this is the thing that we need to do next. What's really important is for us to be listening and to hear what are the next steps that we could be introducing, and listening to groups, for example, such as CENIC, that will make recommendations to us to say, this makes sense. And I'll use this as an example. At the beginning, I talked about how Fortis landed in Latoria North and that we're not aspirational for that in Latoria South. The reason it was when it landed in Latoria North was because we thought that was the most environmentally sound thing to do at the time. And now we've realized we can do better. And I would suggest in the next 5 years, 10 years, we're going to figure that out as well. We're going to figure out that we need to do things better.
Thank you. Cynthia, the next question goes to you. And your question is, do you believe that the tree cutting bylaw in Colwood is strong enough? Why or why not?
So no, I don't think it's strong enough because it's been kind of watered down and directed towards residents who may have trees on their property, which is important. But it largely was enacted to try to complement the OCP initiatives to try to preserve our tree canopy. And that is largely kind of being ignored by development. Thank you.
Thank you. David, the next question is to you. And your question is, would you support a recommendation for the usage of low carbon concrete in Colwood buildings? why or why not?
Okay, that's a tough call. The low carbon concrete, well, sure, hey, we can win all the way. There are other optional or alternate building materials coming along. I'm not sure it's our place to recommend the usage of the low carbon concrete specifically, because that could begin a long, terribly tedious process of affecting building codes and such like that we actually don't have authority. We need to encourage the use of low carbon materials. Just Biofiber, JBF, look it up, folks. It's an interesting product. And
Oh, David just froze.
it's a great idea. And
Okay.
low carbon concrete could be a good solution. I don't know enough about it. Thank you.
David, you froze for a second. Do you want to kind of run back your last 10 seconds or so?
The last, simply that we have JBF, the Just Biofiber product that is available to replace concrete. And I have a feeling that we might be chasing a bit of a tangled mess if we start to list specific requirements for materials, but we need to encourage it in some way. We need to study that for sure.
Thank you. Dean, the next question is to you. What actions would you take to reduce or eliminate the waste caused by all those non-recyclable election signs?
Well, firstly, my commitment is I won't throw them in my fireplace and burn them. But I mean, many of us are reusing our signs, and who knows, maybe I'll reuse mine for decades to come. But yeah, I think that, you know, perhaps we can find some use for them. I know mine are like a garbage bag, I guess, so you could put stuff in them afterwards and maybe store it long term. But some of the Coroplast stuff I'm sure can be recycled. My commitment, though, is, and I've said this publicly, is that I am going to bring a motion forward to the next council, if I'm there, to suggest that we look at alternatives to our sign bylaw. Can we go to an all virtual format? Can we have one small sign somewhere in an area where candidates can put their stuff in a defined area, so that perhaps the pollution, the clutter pollution, we can eliminate some of that. So I will commit to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim, the next question is to you. And your question is, how would you vote in a motion for all new buildings in Colwood to include EV charging infrastructure for each unit? You are on mute, Kim. There you go.
Oh, how would you?
So how would you vote in a motion for all new buildings to include EV charging and electric vehicle charging
New
infrastructure?
buildings, I would vote yes. Yeah.
Did you want to expand on that at all?
No, I just think we're moving forward to electric cars. You know, I don't know how long it's going to take for all of us to get there, but I think if it's already there, it just encourages people to get to having a car, or they might have a family member that has one and they might be borrowing that vehicle. So no, I support it.
Thank you. Stuart, your question. How do we make Colwood's waterfront more resilient to the impacts of climate change?
Oh, wow. Well, we don't have to do a lot. The fact is that the city and the OCP has a policy of the green shores, which I agree is the right philosophy, not to harden. When we harden anywhere along the waterfront, then we just move the damage that's caused by erosion and whatever. So the foreshore is in fact pretty resilient. What we do lose is the sand as it moves northward towards the lighthouse, and you can see over time the beaches at Fort Rod Hill and the lighthouse have really expanded because that's the movement for the sand off the beach. There might be some sense in taking that sand and moving it back to Royal Bay and letting it walk down the beach again to let it recover. But as I stated in one of my earlier questions, the science and the studies that have been done on what's going to happen in the way of sea level rise and storm surges and the like show us that we have quite a bit of life left in that beach. And I think we're in pretty good shape. That report will, well, it's the drafts are public now, but the final report should be done within the next 6 or 8 months. It'll be quite encouraging, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen, your question. Do you support a move towards adopting Building Code Step 5, zero emission, even before it is mandated by the province? Why or why not?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this briefly in my introduction at some point, but after reading through the steps code, I support doing as much as we can, as soon as we can. This is a climate change isn't going to wait for us. I think it's important that we get on with it, and if it is something feasible, I of course have to know the situation that we were in at that point. But if it's something feasible that Colwood can do, then I don't see why not. But I'd have to know the context that we are in.
Thank you. So the next round will be candidate's choice of question. So we will go around to each one of you, and you can choose to respond to one of the questions that we just asked the other candidates. You might choose to expand on one of the lightning round questions. So this is your choice of question. And the order of speakers, we're going to start with Stephen, and then go Stuart, Kim, Dean, Dave, Cynthia, and then Rob. So Stephen, your choice of question. You have a minute.
Awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double back to the lightning round question, specifically regarding the OCP and densification. So first off, I want to say that I absolutely respect the vision and the work that went into it. It's an excellent document and should be used to steward the vision of Colwood in the coming years. But I would like to note that since the report was released, we've experienced a global pandemic, fires, floods, a heat dome, and recently 2 supposedly once-in-a-lifetime weather events, which seem increasingly common on the East Coast. This is not to mention we are currently in a housing, economic, and national medical crisis. So context has changed substantially since 2018. I'll say this, the research is clear that thoughtful densification strategies can reduce both the ecological and physical footprint of a build, leaving even more land for habitat, parks, and accessible trails. I'm not suggesting massive changes here, but we must not allow density to overtake available services and infrastructure. But we simply have to curtail our addiction to large footprint residences here, and we cannot do more urban sprawl. Thank you.
Thank you. Stuart, your choice of question.
Well, I'm going to support what Dean said on the signs, actually. I would like to see the sign bylaw altered to limit significantly the number of election signs out there. I don't think they do any good. I mean, somebody puts out 10 signs and somebody else tries to put out 12 and away we go. And, you know, what if we were in like the city of Victoria where they got 30 candidates or something? So there's too many signs out there. We should either eliminate them in the next election or severely reduce them. And really, you know, the effective way to campaign is to put on a sandwich board. So I'd like to see just a parade of candidates walking up and down the roads with their sandwich boards on. That's the effective way to campaign, in my opinion.
Thank you, Stuart. Kim.
Mine's for the Colwood parks and addressing challenges. I think for some of the people that actually live really close to parks, they're finding a real increase in vehicle traffic and parking. And some of the additional parking that's been created is sort of creating a dust bowl. So it's a comment that residents have made. The other concern that they've had is just the speed that people are going and wanting to have some speed bumps to kind of get people to slow down as they're coming into these park areas, just to make it safer for residents or kids or pets or anyone else that's around in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Dean.
Thank you. Back to the active transportation category, please, Alex. I would like to add a couple of thoughts there. I love where we're going with the trail connectivity with what's happening in the new trails that are coming on board in the newer portions of the community and how they're connecting to the older portions of the community. And I think something that a big win for this city is the biggest federal infrastructure grant ever, or some 3-point-something million for the Galloping Goose Bridge. And I don't think people understand yet how awesome this is. I mean, just wait for it to get built, I guess. But just as far as connecting people and getting them out of their vehicles and giving them more opportunities. Also, this council has done things like for new buildings coming on board, what are we doing for electric bike parking and electric scooter parking? Something that doesn't get talked about. We are now talking about it, and we have had some buildings come on board that have bike charging stations now along with the vehicle. Some people can't afford a vehicle. You order one today, you get it like 5 years from now anyways. So anyhow, those are some of my thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dean. David.
Thank you, Judith. I think this is perhaps a density answer or comment. I think one of the ways to do that is to have access, ready access to small food vendors who might appear in these neighborhood node community markets. The city could support this through land use planning, et cetera, and designated spots. The community garden at City Hall right now, if anybody's not seen it, I would recommend you go and look at it. It's brilliant. And that allows access to healthy, nutritious food, as well as the spiritual and strong lifestyle benefits that accrue from that kind of event. Coupled with these community gardens, these localized little things, we could have small little arts venues and so on. We can create so many venues for people to find excuses to just leave their cars at home. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia.
So I'd like to go back to the how do we reduce the single occupancy vehicle question. So for me, like 34 years ago, when I was working for the provincial government down by the legislature, I used to carpool with 3 other people from close to our work buildings in order to make that work. I think Colwood could go a long way towards encouraging people by creating some awards for people who do either walking school bus, work co-op traveling, and try to emphasize the positive actions that the community can take to make a difference on climate change right away. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob, your question.
Great, thank you. Yeah, actually, I'm going to stick with what Cynthia was just talking about as well. And because we all do recognize that our roads are filling up. And so the question becomes, do we build more roads? Do we expand those roads? Or how do we actually make people use public transportation? And the way we move people into public transportation is by making it the most convenient option. So unfortunately, what that sometimes means is the roads need to be busy, so that people are actually choosing a public transportation option, which is faster. And I just wanted to jump really quickly back to it. When we talked about the ferry, one of the things I failed to mention was that in the evaluation that BC Ferries is doing is that this will be a completely electrified ship that will be moving back and forth. The struggle with that will be the infrastructure to support it, which means that it possibly is going to land where the cruise ships land versus landing at ship point. Oh my goodness, a minute goes fast.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. We are now into the closing statements, and each of you will have a minute and a half, and we'll go in reverse order than the way we started. So Cynthia, first to you.
Thank you. In closing, I have a 20-year record of listening to the residents and supporting the environment. I support processes that ensure residents have the facts, are invited to comment, have time to absorb the information, and will be informed of why I vote the way I do. I can commit to continuing to support good environmental planning that prioritizes the function of the ecosystem and the longevity of the built environment to support us in enjoying it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. David Grove.
And thank you again. Well, I've listened tonight to all the candidates and I've pondered these questions we've been asked. I will gladly spend time discussing any and all issues with whomever chooses to contact me. For now, I may be reached at davidgrove.ca, and there's a spot at the bottom of the page. You can send me comments or send an email at david@davidgrove.ca. To answer the question of the most important environmental issue in Colwood, I would answer, further to my opening remarks, lifestyle. We have big, beautiful houses, lots of cars, and all the trappings of modern life. Perhaps it would behoove us to pare back. All the environment deserves our full attention. I close with thanks to CENIC, having been a member since day one. From the founding tea at Carol's house until now, we find opportunity and indeed necessity for advocacy and action in favor of our precious and delicate environment. Would I be voted to sit, I look forward to a successful relationship with many community groups. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, David. Dean Jansen.
Thank you so much, Judith, and thank you to CENIC. My commitments for this next term, if you all have me one more time, community safety. I've spoken about that. I have a background in that platform. Thoughtful, sustainable growth. We've heard many great ideas. I have some of my own, probably not original, but stolen from somewhere. And then active transportation. We've talked a lot about active transportation. I am the chair of the Active Transportation Committee. Park improvements. We've heard much about parks, and I will seek to find opportunities to make improvements and expanding our recreational opportunities. Now, it wouldn't be an all candidates session if I didn't wrap up with my traditional Colwood haiku for this year. Colwood, wonderful, also very breathtaking. We'll love thee always. And the mic drop. Thank you so much. I humbly ask for your support once again. You can find me at Councillor Jansen on Facebook or Dean for Colwood at Gmail or any number of ways. I'm out there on the worldwide interweb. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I would certainly encourage you and anybody else, any other candidates who would like to put your campaign links up in the chat. Stephen McCaskill.
Awesome. Well, first up, I wanted to thank CENIC on behalf of my many peers who are concerned about our future on this planet. We truly appreciate what you're doing. So this year's CENIC Speaker Series featured a talk by Dr. Trevor Hancock, and it really resonated for me. Dr. Hancock is a retired UVic professor working to popularize the principles of one planet living. He reminds us that we only have one planet's worth of biocapacity, yet here in Canada, we live as if there are 4 or even 5 planets just for us. When asked about where to start on such a big issue, Dr. Hancock quoted what is likely an old African proverb. He said, "The nice thing about eating an elephant is that it does not matter where you take the first bite." It's such a great metaphor, and I hope it inspires us all to get on with it and take as many bites out of the issues as we possibly can. I realize development is a messy and uncomfortable topic, and people have a right to be concerned about unmanaged growth. That is not what is happening in Colwood, and it's certainly not what I'm advocating for. The science is clear. Higher density, mixed land use neighborhoods help address climate change, reduce traffic, leave more room for natural spaces, improve health, and create accessible housing. And in the current housing crisis, it's our best way forward. I want to conclude by saying I have lived and gone to school in Colwood my entire life. It's my home. I want to protect its biodiversity, its parks and green spaces, but I also want our community to thrive and be a role model to others as we navigate the inevitable pressures of population and climate change. Please don't be distracted by negative campaigning. Get the facts and vote for positive, forward-thinking voices on Colwood Council. Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you, Stephen. Kim Moons.
Thank you for hosting this evening. We are a small community, and as we take an orderly approach to the goal of 2030, we could implement changes faster and more economically, in turn providing the inspiration to surrounding communities to do the same. I would love to see Colwood be the recycling, reusing, and reducing star of the South Island. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Stuart Parkinson.
Thank you, Judith, and thank you to CENIC for hosting, and thank you to everybody who's listened in. 4 years ago, when I put my name forward for council for the first time, I felt I had something to offer. I retired from my small business that I owned as a professional engineer, and brought that experience and a lot of volunteer experience in the community. What I discovered when I got to work at the council table is just the number and breadth of issues that came before the council on a regular basis, the complexities of running a city, even of this size. So I learned a bit, I think, over the last 4 years. I've enjoyed the challenge. I like to think I've contributed, and I look forward to continuation of that work to try to make this city just as great as it can be, even greater than it is today. So look for your support on October 15th or at the early polls. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart. And just a reminder to folks in the audience, all of those folks you just heard for are running for positions as councillor with the City of Colwood. Rob Martin is running for the position of Mayor of Colwood. Rob, you have 1.5 minutes for your closing statement.
Thank you, Judith, and thank you to CENIC. Environmental stewardship and a city that is growing are not mutually exclusive. Education is the key. From our youngest residents to our oldest, Colwood residents continue to need to learn how to take care of our environment, learn how to be stewards. We need to continue to focus on and try and build a green, sustainable community moving forward. This is not just for us, but it's for the future residents in our community, because we are and will continue to build a community for families. I have been honored to have been given the privilege of being your mayor this past 4 years, and I do hope you will consider allowing me an opportunity to serve again. I do appreciate your time and for being invested in your community by listening this evening. You can find more information about me and some more detailed information on my platform at martinformayor.ca.
Thank you, Rob, and likewise encourage you to put that link up into the chat so that folks can see. So that concludes our session for this evening. I would just like to give a huge shout out to all of the candidates for putting your names forward, for participating tonight, for the work some of you have done in the community, some of you have done on council before. It really is inspiring to see so many good candidates stepping forward, and good luck to all of you. Note that we will be adding the recording for this session to our YouTube, and it looks like Harley's kind of put our Facebook link up, so that's good. So you'll be able to find it there. Also a reminder that should you wish to join CENIC, we're a lovely, friendly group. You know, we meet about once a month, and we talk about issues important, and we have successfully brought a number of issues in front of the previous council, and look forward to doing so again to the next council. So, you know, help us be good environmental stewards in Colwood. Just a reminder to everybody, early voting starts tomorrow. And also next Wednesday, October the 12th, and main voting day on October the 15th. All of the voting takes place at City Hall. And don't forget to also find out about and vote for your school trustee candidates as well. With that, thank you. We are 3 minutes over, not bad. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you soon.
Thank you. Have a wonderful
night.
night.
Thank you, CENIC.